Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Irish Hypnotherapy Conference 2025. Meet the speakers. Today, we are talking to Ronia Fraser. Ronnie, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am very well. I'm great. You are just finished with the UK convention.
I have, yes.
You had a good time?
Oh, it was fantastic.
Excellent. That's the thing about conventions, aren't they? We all love them, actually. It's the connection with people, it's the chance to just engage in hypnosis where you don't always get to do it except with clients.
Exactly.
So, you're speaking in Dublin in April,
hmm
and obviously we've met before because we met in Vegas during the summer. But for those of you who don't know you, who are you and what will you be talking about?
All right. Well, my name is Ronia Fraser, and I'm a multi-award winning trauma recovery coach and clinical hypnotherapist. And I'm one of the leading experts in the field of narcissistic abuse recovery, which means I work with abuse survivors from all over the world, and I help them get back on their feet, regain their mental health, and recover who they were always meant to be, which is also what I will be talking about at the conference. And I shall be giving an introduction into narcissistic abuse recovery, really from a recovery point of view. And I will also be sharing why it is so vital to actually utilize hypnosis to facilitate real healing.
Okay. And the you're one of the few people who do this. In fact, I think if I go looking, I don't think I'm going to find anyone else. But you come from the how did you discover hypnosis as a tool for helping?
Well, I mean, needless to say, you don't end up in this line of work unless it has happened to you. So I have my own experience with narcissistic abuse, and it really messed me up. So
Mm,
I was really struggling with my mental health as a consequence. And as every narcissistic abuse survivor will know, a big part, especially in the beginning of the journey, is, like really studying everything you can find. And way back then, there wasn't really anything out there. It's not like now when you can go on Google and you type in narcissistic abuse and you get all this information. There wasn't really anything out there, but I spend a lot of time studying and pleasing my cognitive function because I'm
mhm.
a brainy person. I kind of needed to figure out what had happened to me because it made no sense. And I then had this really in-depth knowledge about narcissistic abuse, as every survivor actually has. I haven't met a single one who couldn't write a PhD on this topic.
Right.
But what I noticed was I have all this knowledge, but I'm actually not feeling any better at all. And obviously the whole point of recovery is that eventually you come out the other side. And I would go to therapy religiously every week and nothing would change. And I got really frustrated with that. And I think when I was just at a point where I literally had nothing left to lose, and everything I've tried hadn't worked. And when we are at a point like that, what happens is that the mind just expands to possibilities that we wouldn't have even considered before. But because everything else didn't work anyway, might as well.
Yeah.
And that's where then NLP came into my life. Through NLP, I found coaching. And to be quite honest, it's the only reason why I'm still sitting here
Right.
today. Yeah.
So, so through NLP and then through coaching, you basically did, did you find somebody to work with you or did you do it all yourself?
Um, well, so the coaching was kind of like the first step, and I trained with the coaching academy, and what that did in the very beginning was really to shift my mind, my focus away from what had happened onto me, myself, and moving forward. So that was very crucial. And then through that training, I was introduced to NLP, and through NLP, in the NLP training, we had an introduction into obviously the Milton model and hypnosis, and then I just went off
Right.
with the tools that I was given there. And I did have a coach. I still work with him now, which is like 8 years on. I had a coach who was also trained in NLP and also trained in hypnosis. He was also a business coach, so that whole combination
Right.
was really really helpful for me. The thing is, when you're going through something like that, you can't do it on your own. Like I had to figure out a lot of the things on my own because there was nobody who could actually help me specifically for what I was looking for. But I still needed the support in the background. We all need somebody who has our back, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
which is actually really important for anybody who is struggling right now. Just ask for help. I know it's not easy, but it's going to make the whole difference.
Yeah. And in terms of, so you basically did a lot of the work yourself, but with
Yes.
guidance and support, and then
Hmm.
you came up with your whole program, which you're now teaching pretty much all over the world.
Yes.
Um, and in terms of, say, the clients that you work with, what is it? What are the symptoms they present with? I mean, you're using the term narcissistic recovery, but in terms of, say, the stuff that they're actually dealing with,
Yeah,
what?
so and we will be exploring that more depth in the talk as well. But narcissistic abuse and which has is widely accepted now, not in the mainstream, but people who have been affected, get the
Yeah,
connection and realize narcissistic abuse actually causes complex post-traumatic stress.
okay,
So what we are talking about is symptoms like anxiety, 24/7, where even the most simple things become impossible. Going to the grocery store, I remember every time I wanted to go to the shop, I had to have a 2-hour conversation with myself to
right,
just get me to leave the house, right? Because obviously when we are traumatized, we're hypervigilant, nightmares, very, very common, flashbacks, so very typical PTSD symptoms. But then we also have the emotional overwhelm, which plays a big part, and I will be going more into depth
into that.
in that in the talk as well, because it's a very important aspect. We're talking about erratic behavior, self-harm, even suicidal thoughts. So the symptoms that narcissistic abuse survivors experience are actually rather severe, and they have a really detrimental impact on their quality of life.
Yeah, and from what you're saying, and of course, when you're talking about it, I know my mind is just going to a lot of these are inbuilt programs, then they literally become
Mm-hmm.
programs that we run. So hypnosis is a perfect tool in
Yeah.
which
And then
to,
that's exactly the thing, right? When you asked me earlier, how did then hypnosis come into your life? Well, I did everything and nothing worked. And then I realized, well, we got to take it out of the cognitive function because I literally can't have more in-depth knowledge than that, but nothing is changing because obviously the damage caused by narcissistic abuse is so much deeper. And that's also where a lot of the therapies fall short, right? Because you may even figure out what this is all about, where all this comes from, but it doesn't actually change the underlying emotional triggers. And yeah, so that's why hypnosis is so powerful and so important if we talk about trauma and recovery, which is not only narcissistic abuse. Trauma recovery does not happen in the cognitive function. That's
no, I mean
a
that's
fact,
a conversation that I hear more and more where that left brain function, that logical function that everybody loves to live in, but
Yeah,
actually most of the habits, beliefs, and behaviors are not there. So,
exactly.
you know, knowing is one thing, or knowledge is one thing, but knowing is something different entirely.
Hmm.
It's getting it into that other function. And of course, you've spoken all over the world, haven't you?
I have.
And you were in Ireland. Was it in the last 12
I
months?
was, yeah, I was in Ireland. I was in Belfast, Northern Ireland, in June for Action Trauma Summit. Yeah.
Okay. And were you presenting on the same topic?
Yes, the same topic. And that one was actually really exciting for me because it was a big, big trauma conference. It was like with the A list of trauma experts. And then, rock and roll coach Ronnie comes along and talks
Yes.
about narcissistic abuse. And I mean, I've been talking about this for 8 years. And for the longest time, I just had the door slammed in my face, and now all of a sudden, things have changed. The awareness has changed. It means something. People become more aware. They become more interested, and so yeah, that was really great. That it actually opened up to the big stage, if you will, where the
Absolutely.
topic is being taken seriously for what it is.
Yeah, because I mean, there is more and more of that behavior that's out there, and there's no doubt about it. And there's more and more victims and more people who are
Yeah.
suffering from it. So,
Actually, I
um,
don't think there is more. We just talk about it more. It's
well,
we
it
talk
just
about it in a
appears
different
more.
way, right?
Yeah, it appears more. It's like everything else. Something's always existed, but it's just that we didn't have a category for it almost, or a recognition of it. It was just merged into something else.
Yeah.
Now, you've just said something else that's really interesting because you've just described yourself as the rock and roll coach. You may explain that one.
How do I explain it? I didn't give myself that name.
Well,
I was,
somebody did, and it's not the first time I've heard it because your
yeah.
background is music.
Well, I'm not a musician. I
No,
just
that's
look
what I
like
mean,
one.
but the music industry. Yeah,
Yeah, I worked in the music industry, but I didn't give myself that name. I would have never referred to myself that way. But one time after a show on the tour bus, I was introduced as this is rock and roll coach Ronnie, and then it just stuck. And a lot of people refer to me as the rock and roll
rock and
coach.
roll.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
I
when you
mean the
hear
hair
that name,
helps, you know.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, it's recognition, isn't it? Because how long were you in the music industry?
About 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yeah, and then I stepped out of it because of what had happened, and as every survivor does, you know, first when you start out, you feel sorry for yourself and you blame everything and everyone for what has happened, and I very much blamed the music industry, like the scene, you know, which is
Yeah.
very dysfunctional and toxic
Right.
in the first place. But then at the end of the day, it was about me anyway.
Yeah.
And after I, you know, had undergone my own healing, now I actually step back into it in the function of coaching and then like the work that I do now, which is a very different experience
I was just going to ask.
than
Yeah. So
a
that
few
must be a
years ago. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. You look at it with a completely different set of glasses or lenses on, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still I still get the taste of rock and roll, but in a much more healthy way
Excellent.
than
The
it
way
used
it
to.
should have been always, says you.
Well, not really, because I needed that experience to get
Okay.
to here, right?
Yeah. Well,
So,
that's true too. That's true too. Life is a lesson, isn't it? It's a journey where we learn things as we go.
and it never ends.
No, it never ends. It only gets better.
Exactly.
That's it. Listen, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to say to anybody just before we finish up?
Yeah, sure. I mean, please come and see me at the conference. And whether you are a therapist, a practitioner who works with trauma, or you would like to, whether you have maybe a family member or a friend who's going through narcissistic abuse or something that kind of sounds like it to you, whether you're a survivor yourself or you're just curious. You know, I got something for all of you. And unfortunately, it's a topic that impacts so many of us. And we need to talk about it, and we need to do it in the right way. And that's why, yeah, I invite you to please come join me.
Forward to it because I mean, trauma is whether it's in specifically in the narcissistic area or whatever the form that trauma comes. There's tools in your presentation that will be able to help anybody
Absolutely.
to help.
Yes.
So
I'm very practical.
absolutely,
So
absolutely. Well, listen, I look forward to it, and see you in Dublin on the 5th and 6th of April.
I can't wait. See you in Dublin.
And to everyone else, thank you so much for watching. See you guys all in Dublin on the 5th and 6th of April 2025. And all the details are on www.irishhypnotherapyconference.ie. Have an amazing day wherever in the world you are and whatever you're doing.